Everyone remembers the big three: Naruto, Bleach, One Piece. But there was another shonen sitting right behind them that just disappeared. Hitman Reborn ran for over 200 episodes, was based on a best-selling manga in Japan, had tons of merchandise, a massive fan base, and was airing weekly on TV Tokyo. By all logic, this is the exact kind of anime that should have become a mainstream classic. But it didn't. The anime stopped 2 arcs before the manga ended. Never came back, it never got a proper continuation, and to this day, most newer anime fans barely know it existed. And here's the weird part: it didn't flop, or it didn't get bad ratings, and there was no controversy with the anime. In addition, the manga was still ongoing and strong. So how does a successful long-running shonen just end? Reborn didn't get cancelled for one reason. It was a chain reaction of industry decisions, timing, and one very specific problem in the anime industry that hit this series especially hard. To understand why it died, you actually have to go back to how it even became popular in the first place, because Reborn becoming a battle shonen was almost an accident. Reborn's rise to popularity started off rather weird. It began as a completely different kind of series, a gag episodic manga with no tight plot progression or stakes, and it had a set repetitive formula for every chapter. Unfortunately, this didn't mesh so well with Japanese fans. The whole ratings for each chapter were usually poor for Reborn, which usually meant getting your manga axed. However, there was one saving grace for this manga that even the Japanese fans back then praised it for: character designs, which was real as fuck because multiple of my favorite looking characters ever are from this manga. The author cooked. Because of this saving grace, the editors at Jump pressured the author to lean into a battle shonen arc. Thus, the first major arc, the Katekyo arc. And it was good. An actual villain, stakes, tension, and a concrete power system. Fan surveys improved and sales stabilized, thus prompting a full pivot of the series. The next major arcs only further amplified its cultural relevance, and then in 2006, it got an anime adaptation. As with most anime, the anime adaptation skyrocketed its popularity. The beginning gag characters were condensed. However, once it got going, it was only up from there. It was perfect timing as well, as in the West, it coincided with the early boom of YouTube and internet culture, AMVs, clips, anime culture, etc. This makes its fall all the more surprising, but like I said before, it was an amalgamation of multiple unfortunate circumstances. You see, weekly anime has a problem. They run faster than the manga produces, which is why we get things like filler to create a gap. Unfortunately, as we all know, no one really likes filler. It leads to lower viewership and ratings, which was already a trend with the current arc due to its slower pacing. This, coupled with the fact that Reborn occupied a prime Saturday morning spot on TV due to not wanting to risk audience fatigue with more filler, and the fact that it didn't sell astronomical numbers like the big three, the show wasn't cancelled, but investors chose not to renew it after it completed. It was then replaced by Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, probably to maximize sales. Now at this point you might be thinking, okay, that makes sense. The weekly anime format hurt it, and the TV slot changed. But that doesn't explain the real mystery, because plenty of anime ended and then came back. Shows go on hiatus all the time. They get sequels years later, reboots, anniversary projects, movies, something. Especially a shonen with over 200 episodes and a loyal fanbase. That's normally exactly the type of series that gets revived eventually. Reborn never did. And this is where timing hurt the series more than anything else. Because Reborn didn't just end at a bad moment for itself, it ended at a bad moment for the entire anime industry. Around the late 2000s, the way anime was produced was quietly changing. For years, the standard model was a long-running weekly show. One episode every week, year-round, with filler added whenever the manga got too close. That's the system that created shows like Naruto and Bleach. But studios started realizing something. Weekly anime were incredibly risky. They were expensive to keep staffed constantly, the animation quality dipped over time, filler arcs hurt ratings, and if the show wasn't one of the absolute biggest hits, you were basically committing to years of declining returns. Reborn was popular, but it wasn't a juggernaut on the level needed to justify that risk. Right when Reborn ended, studios began shifting to what we now call the seasonal formats. I'm sure we all know of that. Shorter runs, higher quality, longer breaks in between, and most importantly, production committees could evaluate whether a sequel was worth funding before committing to more episodes. In other words, the industry moved to a system where anime had to prove profitability every time it returned. Reborn got caught directly between those two eras. It was built as a weekly anime, but it ended right as weekly anime stopped being the preferred model. To bring it back, they would have to relaunch it as a seasonal continuation years after the original broadcast. And that comes with another problem people don't usually think about: momentum. When a weekly anime ends, fans slowly move on. New shows replace it, younger viewers grow up with different theories, and a continuation years later suddenly has to market itself almost like a brand new anime. That works when a series is a global phenomenon. But Reborn's popularity was heavily concentrated in Japan and certain online communities rather than mainstream Western exposure, which leads to another big issue that hurt it more than people realize. Reborn never received a proper English dub during its original run. That sounds small to some people, but it matters a lot. A dub is what usually allows a shonen to air on television blocks overseas, which is how series build multi-generational audiences.
In Hidden Leaf Village, the art of ninjutsu is a way of life. For centuries, peace and prosperity have ruled the land.
Naruto and Dragon Ball kept getting new fans every few years because they were constantly reintroduced through TV broadcast and streaming. Naruto was on Cartoon Network for a while, Dragon Ball was on Toonami. That wouldn't have worked with Japanese-only dubs. Outside Japan, it lived mostly on early internet fandom. Fan subs, video sites, YouTube culture. That created a passionate fan base, but not a continuously growing one. From a production committee perspective, reviving a show without strong international licensing potential is much harder to justify financially. There's also the merchandise reality. Reborn merchandise sold well, but a huge portion of it was character goods aimed at an older audience, especially character merch rather than toy lines. Battle shonen that return easily usually have evergreen toy sales attached to younger viewers. Reborn sales were real, but not the kind that guaranteed safe long-term revenue for a reboot. So the series ended up in a strange position. Not unsuccessful and not forgotten, but not profitable enough to be safe investment to completely restart a new production model. And once several years pass, reviving a 200-plus episode story becomes intimidating for new viewers. A sequel would require new audiences to watch hundreds of episodes first, and a full remake would be expensive and uncertain. The longer it stayed inactive, the harder it became to justify bringing it back. That's why you don't see a continuation even though the manga finished its story. The anime didn't die because it failed, it died because the industry changed around it at the wrong time. Hitman Reborn wasn't cancelled in the traditional sense, and it wasn't discontinued due to controversy or anything. It was an unfortunate issue of bad timing and industry economics that had begun to outgrow the weekly format. It simply wasn't as big as the big three and others, so it was a casualty of this change. But even after getting cancelled, even though the anime had no English dub, Hitman Reborn continues to quietly persevere with a strong cult fan base who wish for its return. This is a lot more than most anime from that era can say. it sells decent merch, and the industry definitely hasn't forgotten about it. Even recently, there was a 20th anniversary trailer with visuals, and people think they are teasing a remake of sorts maybe. And that's definitely possible as we have entered an era of anime remakes, like Rurouni Kenshin, Shaman King, etc. I would certainly love to see that anime get the respect it deserves.